Good morning, Kingdom Builders. Today is day 16 of our No Complaining Challenge. And there's different levels to complaining, guys. But the thing is, no matter the level, it's still complaining. It's still a state of not being grateful for something. And today on day 16, what I want to talk to you about is perspective. Because I believe the problems that we face are not about the problems themselves. It's about the perspective, the angle, the lens, the viewpoint that we see it from. And this came from a conversation I had with somebody in our group who has a challenging job. He sees death, murder, lies, all kinds of negativity and corruption every day, and has to come home to his daughter and his wife with this. His wife, on the other hand, sees death, sees disappointment, sees heartache, heartbreak every day, every other day, every week. It has to come home. And yet when you meet them, they seem to be living normal lives, happy lives. Their daughter is very happy, and they appear to be successful. And I asked them, what is it? What do you do to keep going? How do you keep this positive attitude? And the answer wasn't some type of productivity hack or some trite response. And it wasn't detachment or compartmentalization. It was perspective. And they told me that the way that they handle their lives and are able to keep this positive attitude is because they know that there are people that are living under worse circumstances. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lot of us aren't really consumed or overwhelmed by our circumstances. We're just consumed or overwhelmed by the story we tell ourselves about the circumstances. You tell yourself a story about the relationship status, the business status, the traffic status, the delayed flight, the rude stewardess. And then we convince ourselves that this is the worst thing that could happen, that we are having a rough life or a rough day. But the truth is, somewhere, somebody is getting a call that the person they just saw last night, they will never see again. Somebody is getting the news that the legs and the feet that they just used yesterday are gone. Somebody somewhere is getting news that they need to come identify a body, that they've lost everything in a fire. And somebody somewhere would be happy to trade places with you in a heartbeat. And I'm not trying to minimize the pain that you're going through or the suffering, if you will, because I do believe that struggles are real and struggles are necessary for some. But it's about recognizing that the way we see things, our perspective, has the power to change our experience without changing the circumstance. And most of you who know me know that I did have some challenging circumstances. One of them was the divorce that I went through with my oldest child's mother. And at that time, a lot of people looked at me and said, oh, it's going to be rough, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't happy about it. But I chose to look at it from a different perspective. And that's what got me through it. I chose to look at it from the perspective that this will work out for me, for the kids, and for her. I don't know how, and I don't need to know how. I do know that it will work out if I trust. And that's what complaining sort of does for us when we don't have the right perspective. It narrows our vision until all we can see, the only thing we see, is what's not right, what's wrong. And I think what gratitude does, on the other hand, is it deepens our perspective, and it allows us to see things from a higher plane, almost like a godly plane. When you're on that godly plane, there's nothing but gratitude. because you remember all the things that are right. You can now see the goodness. You see the light. The complaining asks a very different question. Why is this happening to me? But that perspective shift, it says, what can this teach me? And so today, I want you to think about your circumstances. There's a scripture that says, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. And it's 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. And Paul wasn't pretending that suffering didn't exist, but he refused to allow those problems, those temporary problems, to become his identity. And if you call yourself a follower of Christ, as followers of Christ, we're also reminded, do everything without complaining and grumbling or arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure. And today's challenge has a lot to do with shifting that perspective. The moment you find yourself complaining, just think of one person you know who would wish they were in your position. And we can all think of people. No matter how good you've got it, there's always somebody that has it better. And no matter how bad you've got it, there's always somebody who wish they had it as good as you. So when you find yourself complaining, just pause today. Is this really the worst thing that could happen? Is this really that bad? And then replace that with gratitude, not because you like it, not because life is easy, but because your perspective determines your experience far more than the actual circumstance. And so remember, your problem is not always the problem. Sometimes your problem is your perspective. So I pray that this message hits you today and that you understand that you have a decision to make on how you choose to see things. So choose the godly perspective. Choose to see things the way that God sees them, no matter what you're dealing with.